Welcome to Idea to Investment, the podcast where we dig into the exciting world of entrepreneurship and investment. We tell the stories of the tech creators doing innovative work and the investors who back them up. Along the way, unveiling the fascinating journey from the birth of an idea to scoring crucial investment. We'll highlight the voices of entrepreneurs, showcasing their grit and creativity, all while gaining insight from the investors who believed in those dreams. Get ready to be inspired, stay informed, and stay tuned as we explore the awesome collision of ideas and investments. Idea to Investment is sponsored by TD Ferrera Wealth Advisory Group.
My name is Darryl Croft. I'm the president and co-founder of Electric Vehicle Network based here in Toronto.
Hi there, my name is Daniel Hart. I'm the co-founder of EV Angels. It is a boutique investment firm that's dedicated to support startups, teams, and entrepreneurs in the EV space.
Beautiful. So welcome to you both. I appreciate you giving me your time today. And Darryl, why don't we start with, as we always do on Ideas to Investment, with your 30 to 60 second pitch. Go for it.
Okay. Our company makes the transition to electric vehicles simple for both individuals and businesses. We create car share programs at residential buildings, offices, and commercial locations, allowing people to rent electric cars by the minute, hour, or day.
Wow, that was quick. I guess, you know what, when it comes to a mission statement, Darryl, simple is probably better. So give us a little more depth here. What was the origin of this idea for you? Where did EVNet start for you?
Sure. So it's very important to recognize I've been in the automotive service business for most of my life. We're part of the largest service network, the OK Tire and Auto Network, which has locations across Canada. I was chairman of that group while EVs started coming to the scene. I was chairman for 12 years, and my job was to look at what was coming down the pipe that were going to affect our millions of clients coast to coast. And the more I looked at what EVs could do for the average driver, the more I realized, wow, this is a better way, because I was so aware of the pain points that exist today with internal combustion engines. And I took it so seriously, I stepped down from my role and set up Electric Vehicle Network and brought together a team of experts to really address this issue.
So from its beginnings, was EV Network, was it all about car share? I mean, what was the focus from the beginning?
It is. One thing I recognized very early on with people, even though we all may be grown adults driving on the road today, we are very young when it comes to understanding how EVs are different and how it can make a difference to your lives. And I was convinced the only way people could get to EVs and realize the opportunity was to actually drive it. And it's very unrealistic to expect somebody who doesn't understand the technology to put down a chunk of money to make a lifestyle change like that. So having an ability to experience it in a risk-free and a supportive educational environment was critical, I believed. And that was the impetus in the beginning. Get cars out there, get bums in seats, get people to really get a chance to experience EVs and see if it works for them.
So what's the timeline here? How long ago are we talking? Are we talking at the very beginning of the EV revolution? And for you, I mean, leaving a lucrative, fairly lucrative position had to have been a pretty big leap of faith.
Well, luckily I had years of experience and dealing with consumers and business for many years. I really understood their pain points. And we understood in the automotive service business is that the reality is for gas and internal combustion today, people are having a very difficult time keeping maintenance up to date, affording vehicles, affording repairs, affording gas. That was clear as day. I was motivated by fear, saying, if we don't help our clients find a better way, we are not going to be of use to them in the future. So it was really a fear motivation to say, let's be part of this, what I believe is a guaranteed evolution, rather than be on the sidelines and wait to see what happens. We decided to be proactive, and that really gave us courage to make that move.
Okay, Daniel Hart, maybe tell us what is your personal investment philosophy, and how does EVNet align with that philosophy?
Yeah, sure. It's Really, what happened on our side is, well, my brother was a EV advocate, or has been an EV advocate for over a decade. He was one of the first drivers in Southwestern Ontario to own an electric car. I always laugh at his Nissan Leaf back then had about 100 kilometers of range, and
Wow.
it took about 8 hours to drive from Windsor to Toronto. But the time, now you can drive there and back without a problem, so it's much easier. But so he was a big EV enthusiast. I myself, I was based in the Middle East. I was based in Dubai. I had a tech business in Dubai, and I was lucky enough to sell that software business and return back to Canada in 2020, just as COVID struck. We basically decided to form a startup in this space where we were trying to bring together different parties to help with EV adoption, because we saw that being a big challenge. We saw that there was a lot of challenges with people taking those first few steps, as Darryl said, to get those bums in seats, really, to try the cars. Because once you try them, it's something that it's hard to go back. So I myself was not an EV driver in 2020. I went through the experience myself. I realized my brother was right. That's a hard thing to admit sometimes. But we then went. We started to look for a business to really sort of accelerate this. And luckily enough, we came across Darryl just at the right moment. And we decided to back Darryl's business with Electric Vehicle Network. And that was, we were very excited to see sort of Darryl's background, the network that Darryl had through OK Tire. And from my standpoint and my brother's standpoint, we both had the technology background to basically assist with the app development, with the different connections, with all of the technology part to basically add to what Darryl was looking to do. So that's what got us interested and why we invested.
Let's talk about risk, Daniel, because as you mentioned, this is kind of amid and post COVID. We're talking about an emerging technology that still has a lot of questions about its future. How concerned were you about the level of risk going into this?
I think there's the risk is, there's a tremendous amount of risk with every startup. That's the truth that we all have to admit. But there's also underlying a dedication that you can see with some people that no matter what the risk is, they're still going to try to make it happen. And so when you really get down to the core of the why somebody is building a business, and you can see that they're really passionate about doing that, then you can start to say, okay, well, we're going to encounter a lot of hiccups here, but it seems like this person's going to have the grit to get through all of those hiccups. And I think for that, for us, we looked at that as a way of testing out whether we could reduce our risk from that standpoint, to see whether somebody's willing to go through the heartache of adoption and starting a business like that. And the other aspect for us was that we wanted to be involved in the business. So I think that was very different from a lot of angel investors that just want to hand the money over and walk away. We very much wanted to be into the operations. This is a business that we wanted to oversee and to contribute to. So that was also a way for us to mitigate the risk in this particular case.
Okay, so Darryl, take us back even pre-EV Angels. What was your perception of investment? Like, at what point did you know that, okay, this is going to take a lot more resources than I have available to me right now?
Well, certainly just knowing the car business in general and the way we've been around, that's a huge capital deployment, cars, period. The technology, although I'm not a technology expert, I understood that it was going to take time, blood, sweat, tears, and money to make the technology component of it work. So it's not just about EVs. The technology is actually the more important piece of integrating with the charging, having a great user experience, giving the 24/7 access, everyone just walking up, opening the car, driving away, ending it with no keys. I knew that technology pieces were out there, but I also knew that it was going to take some investment. And so it was a match made really in heaven when I met Daniel and Sean. They had all those skills to go along with that, I'm going to say, investment also of time and effort and expertise along with money. And that was going to be the case. There were many people before we met EV Angels that said, oh yeah, this is going to be great. Grow it really fast, give us your hockey stick projection and go. And that was not the way to do it. It was get the technology sorted out, do proper testing. And so when Daniel and Sean and myself talked about that component, it was clear that they were the right partners for us.
What was your response or were you looking for an investor who also wanted to have a hand in the business? Because not every investor wants that, or not every business entrepreneur wants to have an investor with their hand in the business.
No, part of our initial investment ask was to go out and try and buy that technology piece and the implementation piece, which we didn't have exact vendors yet. We just knew we had to do it. The fact that EV Angels had that capability and desire to make it happen just made my life an awful lot easier to sort that out. And it just worked out wonderfully for them to come in. So that, to me, was more important than anything else. Get the product right, get the service right, get the experience right. And right from when I met, like as Daniel mentioned, Sean clearly was passionate about EVs. He understood the challenges. It wasn't, we never saw it as an easy walk in the park. We knew there were going to be a lot of challenges to work out. We didn't foresee COVID, I got to say that. And we didn't see the fluctuations in vehicle pricing and availability. That was not in our crystal ball. But I'd have to say equally with Daniel and Sean, their willingness to work through it, look at what's going on and work together was, in hindsight, really, I couldn't ask for anything better, or partners better to work together to guide us through that period.
So I think, Darryl, it would probably be a good idea for us to maybe talk about just what we are talking about. Let's talk about the user experience. So from a customer perspective, what will they experience when they go through the process of an EV net rideshare?
So what happens, first of all, is the discovery process. Somebody who actually wants to try an EV. And that could be a number of reasons. We have people that maybe want to go away for the weekend and they said, you know what, I heard EVs might be interested. I might want to try that. In our very real case, and a lot of people come in with their gas cars, they need repairs, they need a vehicle. So in our shops at the OK Tire level, hey, what do I do? And what a great opportunity to try an EV with low risk and, just try it out. So that was obvious to us as an opportunity. And also, I have young children that have moved out into condos, and affordability for anybody, but young people today, they don't want to be spending a ton of money on gas and fuel. And they also don't want to spend the time going into shops. So EVs takes all that off the table, but they had to figure out, if I live in a condo, can I get charging and what type of vehicle? So those are various use cases people would have to want to try an EV or want an EV, different motivators. And we're very fleet oriented as well. So there's a lot of businesses that were telling us, look, we want to start reducing our emissions. We want to start acting on this for our staff and our company. How do we do it? And I could tell you, there's some huge companies that are very early days in figuring this out. So both the fleet and the individual side, there's different environments, office buildings, residential, commercial settings that our solution makes sense for.
So, Daniel, that must have been very, very attractive to you and Sean. As far as scalability goes, I mean, basically, we're talking about people who drive. So, like, there's quite a few of those people.
That's correct. Yeah. So we had just before we met Darryl, we'd done some digging into the total addressable market, and as you said, it's every person who drives a vehicle, and every business that has a vehicle. So it's the addressable market is enormous. The question that we had at the beginning was how quickly that adoption curve, would happen. And also from manufacturers not having vehicles available, which we saw a lot in 2021, 2022, to infrastructure challenges of is there going to be enough electricity, to the government stating, oh, yep, we're going to have everyone driving EVs by 2035. All of the different aspects to looking at how quickly that adoption would take place. The one thing that we knew for certain was this is going to be enormous. It's an enormous market. The other thing that it takes a little bit to come to a second conclusion of that the existing players don't really know how to do this. And that's a bit of a challenge. And that we saw that in the manufacturing space with Tesla just winning on the electric cars compared to the existing manufacturers. So you thought, who is this startup Tesla trying to take on these behemoths? And you realize that they had to start from the ground up and build something entirely different. Well, we see that very much the same way with the rental space in terms of the rental vehicles. We've seen some of the rental car companies have a lot of challenges bringing EVs into the space. And so we realized that you had to look at this from a ground up perspective, and you had to try to take the lessons that the existing players had learned in their time, but you have to again look at how do I charge the vehicle every time it's returned? How do I make sure that it's always available? So yeah, you have to. There's a lot of challenges that you see, and so we saw this as being a huge potential market.
So, Darryl, Daniel kind of touched on this, the concept of adoption barriers. What's keeping people from purchasing an electric vehicle, and to some extent, what's keeping people from even trying an electric vehicle? So, I usually talk a lot about successes, but we like to talk about the challenges you faced too. Is Darryl, that adoption, the many adoption barriers, getting over that? Is that a big challenge for EVNet?
Well, I got to say at a global level, I want to talk to that first. EV adoption is taking off incredibly in Europe and China and Asia. We are the laggards. North America are the laggards of the world. And within that, Canada is a laggard compared to US. And within that, in Ontario is a laggard in Canada compared to BC and Quebec. So I guess I was a little optimistic earlier that we would wake up a little earlier to the benefits of EV. There's no doubt. You talk to anybody in the automotive space, we're all going EV. It's just a matter how quickly the countries will allow it to go. And it really is the resistance. It is not that it doesn't make sense. It's how many barriers are going to be put up. So disinformation has been a big one. People are looking at myths from, like Daniel told you about Sean's first car. Sean's been through multiple EVs since then. So everyone hears about that story from the little tiny car from 15 years ago, and that doesn't work for me. Absolutely will not, but that's not reality. Today we have an exceptional range, lower cost. So people are hung into a few nuggets of old information. And then there are a lot of anti-EV. Let's be clear, like half the country is anti-EV right now. So you get a lot of people who will say to your face, things are patently wrong. So the education is I'm surprised at how much it takes to educate grown individuals on simple concepts. And the math doesn't lie. The economics doesn't lie. We're talking about emissions here. Yes, emissions is one thing, but the pure finance, people don't know what the current transportation using is costing them and killing them. People don't want to know. It's painful when you pay a bill to get your engine done, your transmission done. So they just go on and forget about it. But when you sit down, do the math, and go, wow, I could save $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year. That car may cost me $5,000 or $10,000 more, but I pay that back in an early. So really, the education is one of those barriers that everyone has to go through it individually. I can't get people in a room of 300 and say what I'm saying, because they'll go in ear one ear and out the other. When you sit down with an individual, and then when they really get in the car, here's what happens every time. You go for a drive, you see how fast, how quiet, how smooth. You lift the hood and you realize there's no engine there. And it's like, oh, I get it now. So we have to get millions of Canadians through that. And that education is there. So we've got to do it as quickly, as efficient as we can. But people have to have that opportunity to learn. Once you drive it, you do not go back. People find out, I love EV, I'm buying another EV. Right now, we have clients go through their second and third EVs with us right now in our short period of existence. They've upgraded to a bigger model, newer model. So that is one of the obstacles. The other one, which shocked me the most, I got to admit, for all the press and brouhaha about how we're going to go electric, all the governments, we're going to say we're going to do it. What I found out is it comes down to simple finance. Today, the car finance, there's a lot of money in financing cars and that, and the traditional banks and lenders, they understand. You could look at a track record of a Ford F-150 or Honda Civic. You don't have that track record on electric. So they just don't know. Number one, they don't know how to rate the residuals of financing. So the biggest obstacle people have today is just get reasonable financing. People are paying more to go to electric and do the right thing for them. Even though they're saving a lot more, they're still paying more, and it ticks people off. They're like, why am I paying a higher monthly for my electric pickup than my gas, even though I'll save more? But there's a financial penalty. And I thought that by now, the governments and banks and financial institutions and the climate funds would be got their act together and say, wow, there's tremendous benefits here. When people have more money in their jeans because they're not paying us to fix their cars or spend gas, there's a great financial opportunity. But the financial industry, which is not just in our sector, a lot of the new technologies have been slow to catch up. And that is one of the big limiting factors today is financial availability for people to do the right thing and save money.
So, Daniel, from your perspective, is that what it's going to take to get over the inability for people to be educated? Is it just going to come down to the pocketbook?
I think that's the biggest factor, and I think Darryl is 100% correct there. There's we've seen examples where you'll go to a manufacturer that has both internal combustion engine cars and electric cars available, and the financing for the internal combustion engine cars 1% or 2% or something like that, whereas the electric car, they'll say, well, it's just the normal 4.5% or 5%. So that you'll and these are probably numbers from a year ago, but it's basically incentivized the manufacturers that have a mixed fleet are incentivized at the moment still to sell their gas cars. And I think that's the current challenge that you get when you go to the dealership is that you're not getting a unbiased or you're getting a biased opinion for it, and they're trying to sell the vehicles that they have available in the lot. And so I think that's where the pocketbook really, we have to understand that over the long term, the electric cars are much better, both from the pocketbook and environmentally. But just in terms of costs, if you try to do the total cost of ownership for some of these for these vehicles, you realize that electric cars do save you a lot of money in the long run. That's a hard argument to make for most people. So it's just something that we have to sort of explain and try to educate for.
Well, and I think it's kind of the best of both worlds here too, because when you talk about vehicle ownership, regardless of whether it's electric or gas, for a lot of people, it's getting out of reach, which means that car share is probably the answer.
That's been a huge demand for us here in Toronto, particularly. People, the multi-unit residential buildings realize I cannot afford a condo or an apartment and two cars, that we need two cars. So they have to reduce the cars they have available to the family, and car share is a natural fit.
Okay, so let's talk about coverage. I mean, how many markets are we talking about for EVnet currently, and what does the future look like? How rapidly are we expanding this?
Well, right now we've started out, worked out all our kinks here in Southern Ontario. We have projects in London and Burlington and Kitchener and Toronto. We are in talks with national property owners, big groups that are recognizing exactly, they're coming to us and they're saying, we realize our tenants or our condo owners can't afford it all. This will work for them. What can you do for us? The key in there is we provide the experience. We provide the ability to have the car share. You have to have the infrastructure for charging, which I got to give credit. A lot of the progressive dealers have thought about that. They've installed charging or they're ready to do it. And they love the fact that we can take care of everything else. We can provide the education, the cars, the experience, the accessibility. So we're right at that point now of there's more orders coming in. Where we're going to run into now, which we recognized early on, when you go out to deploy hundreds of EVs, it's a lot of money. It's a whole other level. So we're prepared for it. We have for projections for it, but that's going to be the next stage for us because cars are not cheap.
Indeed. Daniel, what excites you about the future of EVnet?
I think the growth potential. I think that what Darryl is saying there is again spot on. We've had a few years where we've been very much testing the technology, and we haven't been entirely quiet about it, but a little bit of stealth mode. We haven't been making too much noise at EVnet, and I think the potential there for just having so many more locations, all of the infrastructure is in place. All of the technology is in place. It's tested now. We have a very exciting project here in London. That's the Eve Park, where they have a parking tower as well. So we were just doing testing on that yesterday, actually, with Tesla's pulling into a Tesla pulling in out of the parking tower with nobody in it. So they using the summon feature, so the car just came out of the tower on its own. So we're really at the forefront there for a lot of the technology side. We can solve, we can reduce the parking requirements for buildings under construction. So you don't have to put as many parking spaces in a building if you have a car share. You can reduce the cost of ownership or reduce the cost of transportation for every condo owner or every resident who lives in those buildings. And you can reduce the number of vehicles on the road by doing this. So I think there's a big potential for us to grow pretty rapidly. And yeah, we're partnered with the right people. So I think it's right at that point where we might be talking about hockey sticks sometime soon.
I love it. I'd like to wrap up with the same question for each of you, and that is, if you could travel back in time, go back and give yourself one piece of advice that might have helped you avoid a certain problem or barrier, what would that advice be? Darryl, I'll start with you, and we'll give Daniel a chance to think about his answer.
I would think the power of misinformation when there's established incumbent players, they have an incredible ability to put up blockades at a mass level. Obviously, we saw it in the smoking, the tobacco industry. We've seen that. I didn't foresee it in the automotive business as it's been, and the oil business. So that I would say, being more aware of misinformation and disinformation. And when people are uncertain, they don't move. That's always been the case. So I'm just shocked at how much in North America we've allowed that to happen. But it's just being undone by people actually driving it, and that goes away. But that's a surprise to me.
Okay, follow up then. If you from the beginning had been told, look, misinformation is going to be a big part of this, it's going to be a huge barrier to adoption, how would that have changed things for you? Would it at all have changed the direction you went?
It wouldn't. It just we had wasted some times going to some places to talk to people in mass, and you get people just arguing about facts. They'd come up and say, "I heard that the batteries can't be recycled, or they're going to be degraded in 5." Like total nonsense and misinformation. I think if we had known about that earlier, we would have prepared we wouldn't have engaged. We wouldn't have lost some time trying to argue with those points. So we've learned now, hey, when people want to hear the facts, we point that out, and just, you got to ignore the part that's in misinformation. That's probably would have saved us a little bit of time.
All right, Daniel, how about you? If you could travel back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would your advice be?
I have to admit, the first thing I thought when I heard that question was to buy Tesla stock back in 2010.
That's actually the first thing I thought of too. Is buy Tesla stock for sure. But okay, that's the first thing you would tell. You're allowed to give yourself two pieces of advice. What's the
right? I think the other thing would be to if I'd go back, let's say 10 years or a little bit longer, would be to believe that the EV revolution was going to happen. I think that would be the advice I would give myself. It was sort of, we're still early days today, but it would have been nice to know that 10 years ago as well, and to actually double down on it back then. And I think that there's it was hard for people like my brother to explain that when he first got involved in this. And he would drive around his Nissan Leaf and see how fast it is. I can zip ahead of the Mustangs and etc. back in his old car, and it's so quick, and so much fun, and to just know that the technology would catch up, the battery technology would get to where it is today, where you have enough range, we're charging, you can now charge a vehicle often in 20 minutes. So just to have faith that those things were coming back then, I think that would have been very helpful.
Well, I am very excited about where this is all going to go, and I'll be watching very closely the future of EVnet. Daniel, Darryl, I thank you both so much for your time, and appreciate you joining me.
Thanks so much, Ken. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope we get to connect, as the industry evolves a little further.
Thank you so much, Ken. Really appreciate it.
My thanks to Darryl Croft, President and co-founder of Electric Vehicle Network, and Daniel Hart, co-founder of EV Angels. Idea to Investment is sponsored by TD Ferrera Wealth Advisory Group and is made possible by Tech Alliance of Southwestern Ontario. If you'd like to learn more about Tech Alliance and the resources available to entrepreneurs and startups, go to techalliance.ca. My name is Ken Eastwood. Thank you so much for joining me.